Okay guys, so you want some more real-world application of drag car suspension tuning at the shop? Here we go. Let's take this customer who gave me permission to share his data, share information about his drag car. His comment was, "This is how we all learn. Please share whatever you want to share." So come along with me. Let's go over the before and after suspension settings, before and after data log, and before and after video of the car launching. I want you to focus on the content here and what we're going to share with you today as you ride along with me in the Kevin Wilson SBC in-shop suspension baseline. Let's roll. Hey, let me throw this in real quick. I need your help at the end of this video. You're going to see everything about this car, and what I want to know is at the end, and you see how the car is working now, please tell me, what changes would you make next on this drag car? Let me know what you would do from this point after you see how the car worked after these changes. What changes would you recommend Richie make next on this car? Hey, welcome back to Kevin Wilson SBC. I know it's been several weeks since I've had any content out. Life has been very busy, but I want to keep getting content out as I'm able to. I still owe you a part 2 on question and answers, so bear with me. I figured this would be a good time to go over some real world in-shop suspension setup of a drag car, and you're going to have some video of this car, and this racer gave me permission. You will recognize this car, but I just want to say a special shout out for this racer allowing me to use his car. This is one cool Vega, and it's a very nice ride, and let's jump in and go over some of the details of this car. Very first thing, let's talk about how the car came to the shop. The car came to the shop. It's a big tire slick car, 16 by 33 big tire slick. It has AFCO double adjustable 3860 big gun shocks on it. It has strange engineering front struts on it. It's a round tube chassis car. The car is 98 inches in wheelbase. So this is a very strong running car. And like I said, if you're at Darlington, you'll probably recognize this. Estimated power levels of around 1100 horsepower. This car runs on muscle. Power glide transmission with a 180 first gear. The car launches from 6,000 to 6,200 RPMs. And when the car came to the shop, the car was very inconsistent. It would every now and then run a 118 60 foot, but generally very unpredictable and slower 60 foots than that for the most part. And the car came in a situation where this racer generally doesn't let a lot of people work on his car. He reminds me a lot of my dad and myself, where he's very hands-on. He does everything with his car, but he got to the point to where he's like, I just figured it was time to let someone else baseline the suspension, set the car up as they recommend, and then let me go out and test. Now, Richie had made many changes trying to figure this car out. So right now, I want to show you the 4-link setting that Richie ran predominantly on this Vega before he brought it to the shop. While you're looking at this screen, a couple things I want to point out is the very first thing is the calculations put this around 36.5% anti-squat. A 98-inch wheelbase, and the instant center was in front of the center of gravity. The instant center was 3.364 inches off the ground, and it was 54.284 inches long. You got the upper bar angles, lower bar angles, bottom bar drop. You got all this information right here on the screen that you can go over. You see the center of gravity height, the center of gravity length, and where it is in relation to the wheelbase. Now, I'll share with you the weights of this car. This driver is 260 pounds, and when I did this work at the shop, I weighed 258 or 256, I can't remember. This is a very, very low percentage of anti-squat, even for a big tire slick car. And there are a lot of guys who continue to run anti-squat with a big tire slick very similar to this. What I have found with shock technology, tire technology, tire compound, and track prep that we have today, I have generally found that running this low of a percentage of anti-squat is really not needed. This is when we start talking about getting your combination in balance. You'll see from the shock data log that has the RPMs and drive shaft RPMs on the data log, and you see the video, you will see that, in my opinion, the suspension was not in balance with everything else working together. On a prep track with very, very low percentage of anti-squat, it's really going to pull a lot of weight over the car. It's really going to upset the chassis, upset the slicks, and from one run to the next, you're going to be very unpredictable. This driver told me the car was very unpredictable on the 60-foot. At best it was 118, probably more like 119, 120, 121. The car would go left. I mean, the car was just really, really unpredictable on remaining consistent. So let's go ahead and pause and let's take a look at some of the before videos of how this car left. Watch the sidewall, watch the reaction of the wheelie bars. Just take a look at how the car is reacting. Okay, let's watch this run again without any sound, and I'm going to slow it down. I want you to notice how unhappy the rear chassis is. Right rear wheelie bar is not even touching the ground. The car is experiencing a bunch of dig and a bunch of sashaying left to right. Watch the car as it goes left and then right and then back to the left. This is behavior that is going to create a very unpredictable leave and make your 60 foots wildly vary. Look at the car bouncing. Look at the left to right sashaying. You can see it real good here as we back it up and go forward again. Let's go ahead and put on the screen now the data log of how some of these runs looked with the car going down the track. Now what you have here is you have the car idling. You can see here where the car is idling. He comes up on the two-step to around 6,000 RPMs. He lets go of the button. You have an immediate little tick up of extension, and then you have the rear squat coming over. And take a look at the RPMs. Look at the red RPM line of how it levels out and actually has a pretty strong dip down before it starts rising and coming back up, getting through the converter. Now if you go down and you look at the line here at the very bottom, the drive shaft RPMs, you can see where he launches. It pulls the drive shaft down. The tires are getting slammed. The sidewalls are getting crushed. The slick is really coming into the track. Now this is with around 10 pounds of air pressure in these big tire slicks. And you can see how it really brings the RPMs down to the drive shaft. When you can see the same things holding true on the engine RPMs. The RPMs start to come back up. The drive shaft begins to flatten out again for a little bit while it's trying to come through and overcome this dead hooking, and then it finally overcomes the upset of the rear chassis, and then the RPMs and drive shaft begin to go up, and then you can see the shift point. Now if you notice and you look at the rear shock data, so the rear shock data is supposed to be blue and orange, but it looks more like yellow and blue on my screen. You can see the both shocks go up in extension, come down in the squat. they start to go up in extension, they start to extend, come back down in squat, and they're oscillating extension squat pretty much through everything that we have on screen here. I was able to get the car in the shop and measure everything and get everything situated. Richie had made some changes to the 4-link bars before he brought them to me. So pretty much what we had to do is we had to start from scratch, and I had to recenter the rear end, get the rear end square in the chassis, and then let me go over with you how we set the car up. I'm going to go ahead and put on the screen now the 4-link plot of how the car left the shop. So let's take a look at this. You can now see that the instant center height is 7.526 inches off the ground. The instant center length is 44.897. And you can see that the instant center is a little bit behind the center of gravity mark of a 98-inch wheelbase of this car. It's also important for you to notice that I'm right at 98.8% anti-squat. Remember when we've talked in the past about keeping things in balance. On a big tire slick car that is doing bracket racing on bracket prep or even heavier prep tracks, you don't need to get too far off of the extremes in my experience. Now, every car is different, so not everyone needs to run out and start making these type of changes if you're not having issues. If your car is working fine and working consistent, don't fix something that's not broke.
Don't fix something that's not broke.
If you want to go out and make educated changes, then understand the principles I'm talking about here and understand why you're making those changes, and then go make those changes and see how your car reacts. But this is exactly how the car left the shop. Now, there's a few things I want to point out. When Richie brought the car in to me, the chassis height, and when I measure chassis height, I'm using the chassis bottom bar, very lowest hold, closest to the ground. I'm using the center line of that hole to the ground. And that's my chassis height reference point. When the car came in, the chassis height, or in those videos, the chassis height was 6.5 inches. When the car left my shop, it was 6.375 inches to the ground. On the rear, these are the 4-link changes I made. Now, we did make other changes. So, in my opinion, the way the shocks were set up before the car came to me, most of the shock was probably in the compressed state. There was not enough of the shock travel to allow some compression. And it's very possible that the shock was actually compressing and bottoming out the shock, which when you bottom out a shock, you have nowhere to go but the sidewall. And if you bottom a shock out and you start crushing the sidewall, because that weight transfer is going to go to wherever it can go, you're going to start upsetting the chassis. So we did extend the shock more, so I had more compression travel, and I knew I was going to end up anywhere from 100 to 90% anti-squat, so I knew I wouldn't need a tremendous amount of extension travel, and I was going to use the valving in the big gun shocks to grab that extension and then use the compression and the springs to help control the squat. Now, these are AFCO 3860s out of the box. Richie didn't have any special valving installed in them. So here's how the car left the shop with regard to the springs. So the shock installed height was 16 3/4 to 17 inches. It was in that range depending on how the chassis settled. What you will find is that the shocks fully extended were nearly 19 inches, and fully compressed the shocks were 13 inches. So with us having the shock around 16 3/4 to 17 inches, I had enough extension travel, but I had a fair amount of shock compression travel to allow the suspension to work. On the compression settings, and on most of your higher end drag racing shocks, you're going to always start your adjustments from full tight. So on these shocks, we went on the compression 12 clicks from full tight, which is written down as -12. And on the rebound, we went -12, 12 clicks from full tight on the rebound of the AFCO Big Guns. On the rear anti-roll bar, I did take the right rear, the passenger side link. I always scale and set up my drag cars with the right rear anti-roll bar link disconnected. I don't want that roll bar coming into play until I'm ready to set my final weights on the car, my final corner weights. So what I did on the anti-roll bar of this car is, with the anti-roll bar fully neutral with me in the car, with the driver weight in the car, anti-roll bar fully neutral, I lengthen the right rear anti-roll bar 1/2 turn. If you think about this big block Chevy as it torques and the left front is trying to come up more than the right front. Now this chassis was solid. This was a very nice round tube chassis. There was very little to zero flex in this chassis. Even with a chassis that rigid though, the right rear is going to have more forces applied to it because of the rotation of the motor and the drivetrain twisting up on the left front. When the left front has more force applied up, the right rear has the opposite of force applied to it. The same is true with the right front and the left rear. If the right front is going down, then the left rear is coming up. So as a left front is being pulled up, the right rear naturally is going to have more weight pulled down over it. Take that anti-roll bar length and lengthen it 1/2 turn so that when the chassis tries to roll over it, it has nowhere to go but over the left rear. Let's talk about the front end a little bit. When this car came in, the car had pretty good camber and caster and toe in. However, whenever we set and checked the front end alignment, we noticed that the car had 3 degrees positive caster on the left front and only 2.5 degrees positive caster on the right front. We always try to run our caster even on a drag car. We were able to adjust the right side a little bit and get it to 3 degrees positive caster. So we got the caster even, and the camber at right height was 3/4 degree negative. And we set the toe at 1/8 of an inch toe in, because as the front end came up a little bit, the camber improved and the toe in was almost like a 1/16 of an inch. It was dead on. So we got the front end straight. Now, how did I set the front struts on this car? If you notice, short wheelbase car, 1100 horsepower, launching at 6,000 RPMs. This car gets it. There is some power being put down on this car at the weight and at the wheelbase of it. So I did not want any front end travel allowing the front end to come up any more than it's already coming up. We also, like I said, set the chassis height to 6 3/8, 6.375. You can see the empty weight on the car. I'll put those back on the screen. The empty weight was 2,602 pounds with no one in the car, and then it was 2,858 with me in the car, which tells you I was 256 pounds whenever I did this work at the shop. We also had the car go out and we brought the air pressure down to 9 pounds of air pressure. You can add air pressure to help from killing the sidewall on the bottom end, but the more air pressure you run, the more chance you are taking of increasing wheel speed and introducing spin on the top end. It's a fine line, guys, and you don't want to find that line the hard way at 150 miles an hour and you start losing traction on the top end, and then the car is going to go where it wants to go. So I knew that by relaxing the anti-squat and not introducing so much anti-squat in the car, we could slowly start bringing the air pressure back down to make sure the car is safe and sticking the tire on the top end. We did go out and do some testing. So I got 2 videos that I'm going to show you of how the car went out and tested after our changes. Now remember, before the car came to the track, 118 or 120 60 foot, very inconsistent. The car was very unpredictable in the first 100 foot, and Richie was pretty frustrated with it. He went out and he made 3 runs at Darlington a couple weekends ago, and he sent me these videos. And the second video is where we're going to leave the wheelie bars, and I'll do a voiceover and show you and talk to you through the 60 foot, the ET, and the mile per hour on each of these videos. So let's show these videos. Okay, here's run number 1, wheelie bars 6 1/4 inches. All right, let's do this without some sound. Notice how even the rear end is coming down. See how even the wheelie bars are. Pulls the front wheels, carries them. No sashaying left and right. The car goes straight. But this is 9 pounds of air pressure. But we're not crushing the slicks, we're not bottoming the shocks out. Run number 2, wheelie bars 5 1/4 inches off the ground. This is the run I like the most. We get some good wheel speed, we're not dead hooking the slick, we're bringing the front wheels off the track a little bit. We are hitting that right wheelie bar a little hard, but like I said, I think we can do some tuning on the shock settings. Okay guys, so there you have it. This car went out and made 3 back-to-back passes at Darlington. Well, not, back-to-back, but 3 passes. Look at the consistency and repeatability. Run number 1, 118 60 foot, 516 135 miles an hour. Run number 2, 117 9 60 foot, 514 9 135 miles per hour. Run number 3, 60 foot, 118 515 ET at 135 miles per hour. I will take that consistency and repeatability every time. Now guys, that is a consistent running drag car. Let's go over real quick, since you've seen the videos, the shock data graph of one of the runs after my changes. So let's take a look at this. You have the car idling, you having him come up on the 2-step, and it looks like he's still around 6,000 RPMs on the 2-step. He lets go of the button. Now on this screenshot that Richie sent me, you don't have as good a screenshot of the drive shaft, but you have an excellent view of the RPMs. Look at the RPM graph compared to what we had before. Before the changes, the RPMs came up, leveled out, went down, and then had to pull back through the converter. Here, you have the car launch and leave, you have the shocks go into extension real quick, then you have compression come down over the rear shocks, you have the RPMs level out for a little bit, no huge dip down, no huge dip down in drive shaft RPMs, and then you have a nice beautiful RPM curve all the way to the shift. And now not all tracks are perfectly flat, so you're going to have some bumps through the run, but look at how much smoother the shocks are after these changes. It's working together with the shocks, the springs, the struts, the weight transfer. Everything is working together, and now we're in balance. I want Richie to make a few small changes on the shocks. I mean, Rich may look at this and may want to tweak the converter. He may show his converter guy this graph, and you might be able to even make this better with a different converter setup. Now that the suspension's working, there's more left in this car, but I actually think there's a little more 60 foot in it with some minor shock adjustment changes when he goes back out. I tell you what, you tell me in the comments, based on what you're seeing of the car, what changes would you make in the rebound or compression of the shocks? Hey, I hope this video has helped you. I hope you've enjoyed following along with a real drag car in the shop with real data, before and after data log, before and after video. This is real stuff, guys. This is a 98-inch wheelbase, 1100 horsepower Vega with a 4-link rear setup and strut front end. This is as real as it gets right here, guys, and this is something that you can learn from. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and thank you for supporting the channel. Just remember, we're trying to do 3 things. We want to go fast, we want to go straight, and we want to be safe. Good night.